Have you ever wondered how one man could command the absolute devotion and terror of an entire nation? How a country could be built on both unwavering loyalty and paralyzing fear? Today, we're diving deep into the story of Joseph Stalin, exploring the massive personality cult that made him a godlike figure and the brutal machinery of repression that crushed anyone who dared to question him. This isn't just a story about the past. It's a look into how fear can shape a society, a superpower, and even the course of global history. We'll journey from the grand parades of Moscow to the frozen wastelands of the Gulag, uncovering the secrets of how Stalin's iron grip on the Soviet Union set the stage for the Cold War. To understand Stalin, we must first go back to the ashes of the Russian Empire. The Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, led by Vladimir Lenin, promised a new world for workers and peasants. But after Lenin's death in 1924, a fierce power struggle erupted within the Communist Party. Out of this chaos, a man named Joseph Stalin methodically outmaneuvered his rivals, like Leon Trotsky. He wasn't just seizing political power, he was crafting an image. Stalin began to position himself as Lenin's only true heir, the sole interpreter of communist ideology. This was the birth of a myth, the infallible leader, the wise father of the nation, whose every word was law. The Soviet Union was no longer just a state. It was becoming an extension of one man's will. This carefully constructed foundation of absolute authority would soon support a terrifying structure of control. Creating a god requires more than just political maneuvering. It requires a complete takeover of hearts and minds. That's exactly what Stalin's propaganda machine did. His face was everywhere. Giant statues loomed over city squares. His portrait hung in every office, school, and home. He was the father of nations, the shining sun of humanity, the architect of communism. His life story was rewritten into an epic tale of heroism. Newspapers, radio, and cinema all sang his praises, portraying him as a brilliant military strategist and a deeply caring leader. Art and literature were forced to follow a style called socialist realism, which meant depicting a perfect Soviet reality under Stalin's wise guidance. Perhaps most chilling was the manipulation of history itself. Photographs were famously altered, with political enemies erased from images as if they never existed. This relentless propaganda didn't just promote a leader, it created an alternate reality, one where Stalin was omnipotent and benevolent, and where loyalty was the only virtue. For millions, this image became their truth. But beneath this shiny surface of adoration lay a dark and brutal reality. For those who didn't conform or were merely suspected of dissent, the consequences were horrific. This was the world of the Gulag. The word itself is an acronym for the Main Camp Administration, a vast network of forced labor camps that stretched across the Soviet Union. From the icy tundra of Siberia to the deserts of Central Asia, millions of people political prisoners. Petty criminals and even ordinary citizens arrested on flimsy pretexts were sent to these camps. They were branded enemies of the people. Their crime? This could be anything from telling a joke about Stalin to having a relative who lived abroad. Life in the Gulag was a nightmare of starvation, disease, and back-breaking labor in mines. Logging operations and massive construction projects. It wasn't just a prison system, it was an instrument of terror, designed to break the human spirit and a source of slave labor to fuel Soviet industrialization. The Gulag system instilled a deep-seated fear across the entire society. The simple threat of being sent there was enough to ensure silence and obedience. The terror reached its terrifying peak in the late 1930s, during a period known as the Great Purge, or the Great Terror. This was a state-sponsored campaign of political repression where Stalin sought to eliminate any and all perceived opposition, both real and imagined. It began with a series of high-profile show trials in Moscow. Old Bolshevik leaders, men who had been at the forefront of the revolution with Lenin, were publicly accused of bizarre conspiracies and treason. Under intense psychological pressure and torture, they confessed to crimes they never committed before being executed. But the purges quickly spiraled far beyond the party elite. The NKVD, Stalin's secret police, was given quotas for the number of people to be arrested and executed. Fear and paranoia swept the nation. A careless word, a jealous neighbor's accusation, or simply being related to someone who had been arrested could lead to a knock on the door in the middle of the night. Millions were arrested. Hundreds of thousands were executed with a bullet to the back of the head. The Great Purge systematically wiped out the military's top command, intellectuals, artists, and countless ordinary citizens. It created a society atomized by suspicion, where no one could be trusted. Stalin had not only eliminated his rivals, he had terrorized the entire population into absolute submission. So, how did this system of total control, the cult of personality, and the machinery of repression actually consolidate Soviet power? The answer lies in its brutal efficiency. The purges and the fear of the Gulag eliminated every potential challenger to Stalin's authority, creating a completely centralized state where all power flowed from him alone. The Communist Party was no longer a body for debate. It was a rigid hierarchy designed to transmit Stalin's orders without question. The military, stripped of its most experienced commanders, was rebuilt with officers whose primary qualification was loyalty. The state bureaucracy, from Moscow down to the smallest village, operated on a foundation of fear. This created a society that could be mobilized for massive undertakings. Whether it was rapid industrialization or the colossal effort of World War II, dissent was impossible, and obedience was the only path to survival. This iron-fisted control forged the Soviet Union into a formidable, unified power, but at an unimaginable human cost. It was a superpower built not on consensus or freedom, but on the silence of the terrified and the graves of the fallen. After the Soviet Union's victory in World War II, the world hoped for peace. But instead, the globe split into two hostile camps, marking the beginning of the Cold War. Stalin's system of control played a crucial role in shaping this new conflict. The USSR emerged from the war as a military giant, but it was a society shrouded in secrecy and steeped in paranoia. This internal mindset was projected onto the world stage. Stalin viewed the capitalist West, particularly the United States, not as a former ally, but as an inherent enemy, plotting the downfall of communism. The Iron Curtain that descended across Europe was a physical manifestation of this isolation and suspicion. Soviet diplomacy was characterized by intransigence and mistrust, while espionage and subversion became key tools of foreign policy. The authoritarian structure that demanded absolute loyalty at home meant that the nations of Eastern Europe were turned into obedient satellite states, their fates dictated by Moscow. This rigid, fear-driven approach from the Soviet side fueled a cycle of escalation with the West, locking both superpowers into decades of nuclear standoff and proxy wars. The shadow of Stalinism stretches long into our modern world. When Stalin died in 1953, the terror subsided, but the system he built left deep scars on Russia and the former Soviet republics. It created a legacy of centralized power, a weak civil society, and a deep-seated suspicion of the outside world that continues to influence politics in the region today. The story of Stalin's cult and repression is a chilling reminder of how propaganda can warp reality and how fear can be weaponized to control millions. It teaches us about the fragility of truth and the devastating human cost of absolute power. If you found this exploration of history insightful, please give this video a like, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. Thanks for watching.